know, before Patrick cuts you loose, in order to trade real money, he's got to be absolutely certain you know what you're doing. My wife, Ann, went through it. She's a killer, but she said it takes a lot of self-discipline and hard work. Patrick, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for what you do. Again, check this out, targettrading.co. Great to have you with us here on Outside the Beltway. Patrick, Godzilla wins this afternoon. Give
Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan will be front and center during the upcoming Biden impeachment inquiry. Well, he's here to tell us how he plans to uncover the truth about the Biden family.
And it's an anti-jab victory for New York City teachers who refused to take the COVID jab during the pandemic. Find out how their win could affect your community.
Young and defenseless children who are targets for predators. Ahead, the men who is bringing their stories to the big screen and the world's attention, while also helping to bring them home and their accusers to justice. Those stories and more as American Sunrise starts right now. We've got your back as you start your day.
Articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
We watch every morning while getting ready for work.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live from West Palm Beach and blessed to have the one and only Terrance Bates with us this week in West Palm. Terrance had a good little get-together last night after our 4 p.m. show and with some of the team, and it was nice to relax and be casual with you.
Absolutely. It was great hanging out with you. We missed our very own David Brody. He, of course, is in our Washington, D.C. studios. A lot to talk about, Dr. Gina, today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring him in. David, how you doing there?
Hello, folks. I'm doing great. Yeah, look, I was in bed by 8 o'clock Eastern, okay? I would have been no fun whatsoever. I'm really looking forward to House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan joining us in just mere moments here. And by the way, while they're at it, how about Republicans look into, or at least inquire about who's running the White House? But I guess that's a separate inquiry. Terrance Bates, you're always inquiring about headlines, and you've got them from West Palm.
And there's a lot that I've uncovered as well. The Georgia racketeering case involving President Trump and his 18 co-defendants is getting more confusing and messy by the day. Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis is looking to try the case and all of the defendants as soon as next month. So far, 2 of the defendants, lawyers Kenneth Chesborough and Sidney Powell, have filed for speedy trials and are set to be in court October 23rd. The rest of the group, including President Trump, are either pushing for more time to prepare for trial or to have their cases tried separately. The deadline for co-defendants to waive their right to a speedy trial is November 5th. Apart from looking to have his case tried alone, President Trump's legal team is also considering a move to have his case moved out of state court to federal court. Republican Utah Senator and so-called rhino Mitt Romney, quitting saying that he will not run for re-election. But on the way out, he's blasting his fellow Republicans in the party as a whole.
My wing of the party talks about policy and about issues that will make a difference to the lives of the American people. The Trump wing of the party talks about resentments of various kinds and getting even and settling scores and revisiting the 2020 election. What are the policies for the future? And my party is only going to be successful getting young people to vote for us if we're talking about the future.
President Trump responding on Truth Social saying, fantastic news for America, the great state of Utah, and for the Republican Party. The 45th president going on to point out a big primary fight against him was in the offing, but now that will not be necessary. Congrats to all. Make America great again, the 45th president of the United States writing. The man nicknamed Sleepy Joe Biden is wide awake this morning, apparently jolted to attention by the Republican-led move to launch an impeachment inquiry into him. The commander-in-chief responding to the move on Tuesday, accusing Republicans of simply wanting to shut down the economy and the government. During a campaign reception in McLean, Virginia on Wednesday, Mr. Biden making his first public comments about the push to boot him out of office, saying, quote, I don't know why, but they just knew they wanted to impeach me. Now, best I can tell, they want to impeach me because they want to shut down the government. Meantime, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is sticking to his guns, saying that House Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations into President Biden's conduct. Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption, he says. We'll have more headlines coming your way here in just a little bit. Dr. Gina, I think we need a little bit of word before we get to Chairman Jordan.
Thanks, Terrance. Always happy to go to the word. Today's Bible verse from Jesus Calling is, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
Amen.
Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, I have to tell you, Terrance, just looking out at some of the culture right now, thinking of keeping our bodies as a living sacrifice to Christ, it really puts it all in perspective.
Absolutely.
Well, let's turn now to our top story, the Biden impeachment inquiry. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan looks at 4 specific facts that go to the heart of the investigation against the Biden family. Let's go ahead and bring in Congressman Jordan right now to American Sunrise. Chairman, thanks for being here. And I'm curious to get your take, not just on these 4 facts, but there's been a lot of smoke, tons of evidence out there. But what are you looking for more specifically? There's dinners, there's emails, there's bank records. What would you really want to see here to kind of cement the deal, Chairman?
Well, it's not necessarily what we want to see. It's what we're finding, what the evidence is, what the facts are, and frankly, doing our duty under the Constitution to provide oversight of the executive branch. And so we're going to continue that investigation. The beauty of moving to a impeachment inquiry phase of our constitutional duty to do oversight is typically when you're in that phase and there's some inevitable dispute with the executive branch that and you go to court, the courts are much more likely to side with the House of Representatives because we're engaged in a purely function that is exclusive to the House, the impeachment function that is under our Constitution. That is something that is exclusively the domain of the House of Representatives. And so that's why I think it's important to move to this phase, as the Speaker announced a couple days ago. And so we're going to continue to do our work uncovering, there's so many facts we've uncovered now that I think show real concern there. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I think we've had to move to this phase of the investigation.
Chairman, there was a directive from the Biden regime to the corporate media that said, repeat the lie over and over again that Joe Biden has literally never done anything wrong. And there is zero evidence to prove that he did anything wrong. So I want to ask you specifically, what is the evidence that you feel is the most damning, and what is the most egregious action taken by Biden that can get moderates on board with an impeachment?
Well, I think there's all kinds of evidence, but I will just go to the four central facts that I think tell the story and show what was going on here. Number one, Hunter Biden was put on the board of Burisma. Number two, he wasn't qualified to be on the board. He said so himself in interviews. Number three, Hunter Biden took action. Burisma said, we need relief from the pressure we are under from the prosecutor. There's a phone call made to D.C. on December 4th, 2015. 5 days later, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine, leverages our tax dollars to begin the process to get the prosecutor fired. So those four facts: he's on the board, he's not qualified to be on the board. They take action to relieve the pressure they are under. Burisma does. They take action through Hunter Biden to relieve that pressure. Joe Biden goes to Ukraine and does just that. And that fourth fact, Joe Biden going to Ukraine, leveraging our tax dollars to get the prosecutor fired, that is consistent with what was uncovered with what the 1023 form talked about, where they had talked to the confidential human source. So it sort of validates and confirms what was in that form from the confidential human source. I think those are the key facts. And then finally, you layer on top of that the way the Justice Department handled this investigation, the plea deal they tried to get, the fact that the judge declined to accept that plea deal, the whistleblowers who came forward and told us about all the unorthodox way they conducted this investigation. I think that is why, again, we've moved to this phase of our oversight.
Chairman, I'm assuming we're not going to see any evidence that says make payable this check to Joseph R. Biden, maybe Robert L. Peters. I'm curious a little bit about the pseudonyms here, because that seems to be a big key to all of this in terms of how they might potentially go about and hide some of this stuff through bank transfers.
Well, we're trying to get, Chairman Comer is trying to get access to those over 5,000 emails where Joe Biden used the pseudonym, used the fake name. So we're looking to do that. There's a process again. If we have to go to court on that process, we think it helps that we're in this impeachment inquiry phase of the investigation. But yeah, you can just go down the list. The brand was Joe Biden. I didn't say that. Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's business partner, told us that in a deposition when he's under oath. Right. There's 10% for the big guy. Everybody has said that references Joe Biden. There's the email that says 50% for Pops, where they have to give half the, there's all that. There's the phone calls, the dinners, the meetings, the multiple times the White House has changed their story. There's the multiple companies they were doing business under who were paying multiple Bidens all kinds of money. So there's all those facts. And then there's those four central facts which show that specific action was taken. And this is what the 1023 form says from the confidential human source. It says specific policy preferences were done in exchange for money. And that's exactly what it looks like happened. Again, that's why we're investigating.
Our partners at Just the News broke more Biden crime family news overnight. Hunter Biden met with business associates at the VP mansion in D.C. while Joe was VP. And those meetings involved Kazakhstan and Ukrainian deals they were cooking up with Devon Archer. Congressman, we get fired up during congressional investigations. We do. Everybody gets all excited. But the criminals in D.C., it seems, are almost never held accountable. Tell me we're not getting all fired up again for a big letdown when the Bidens walk free after years of investigations.
Yeah, look, I understand the frustration. I hear it from the folks I get the privilege of representing in the 4th District of Ohio, and I hear it from folks as I travel around the country. All we can do is our job. And as members of the legislative branch, we can't indict anyone. We can't prosecute anyone. All we can do is do the oversight, get the information out there, look for legislative ways, legislative solutions, legislation we can introduce and try to pass that would help remedy some of the problems, use the power of the purse, and if warranted, use the impeachment power. So right now we're in impeachment inquiry phase on this particular issue, and we've done all kinds of other investigations. Now, there is some good news. Sometimes just by showing what's going on, you get the government to change behavior. And we've seen that with the IRS. 7 weeks ago, the IRS announced they will no longer be making unannounced visits to Americans' homes. Now, the commissioner said we're doing that for the safety of our agents. Baloney, they're doing that because we caught them knocking on Matt Taibbi's door while he's testifying in front of the Judiciary Committee. I mean, talk about the intimidation of these. So sometimes just by pointing this stuff out, you can have a difference. And we've seen we got a great decision from the Fifth Circuit just last week on the censorship issue. So we're going to continue to push. But I get the frustration. We just have to do our jobs in the legislative branch, and we're doing that as best we can.
Chairman, stay right there. We've got a couple more questions for you after the break. When we come back, more with the congressman. Also, in addition, COVID mandates. How about what's going on in New York, specifically a big victory there, major victory for the teachers who took a stand against the COVID mandates there in that state. Their story ahead as American Sunrise continues.
went after President Trump for something that wasn't accurate. They said he held up money and got Ukraine to do certain things. Ukraine didn't do anything, and they got the money. But they impeached President Trump for that. Joe Biden leveraged American tax dollars to get certain actions from Ukraine. That's the big irony here. He actually did what they impeached President Trump for.
We continue now with Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Congressman, quite the irony. They impeached Trump for what Biden actually did.
Yep. No, Joe Biden leveraged our tax money, the tax money the people I get the privilege of representing back home in Ohio, leveraged that money to get a political outcome that benefited the company that Hunter Biden was on the board of. Again, on the board of that company, he had no qualifications for being there. So that's I think the crux of the matter, and probably the best fact pattern to show what we think was going on here, what appears by all the facts and evidence to be going on here. So yeah, and then the fact that the irony that they went after President Trump for that when he didn't do it is, again, you can't make this stuff up.
Nancy Pelosi took 5 weeks. First of all, she didn't have a House vote on impeachment inquiry back in 2019. And then she took 5 weeks until the actual House had a vote. How do you see this going down with House Republicans? You got to get those moderates on board. But, many will call them rhinos. How do you kind of figure this out from a House vote perspective?
Well, if there's a need for a vote, and Speaker McCarthy has been clear, nothing he's done is going to preclude having a vote at some point if that's what needs to happen. I do think just the fact that the Speaker of the House, the guy second in line to the presidency of the United States, announces the House of Representatives is in an impeachment inquiry phase of our oversight, I think that has significance. And I talked about that earlier with what we think the relevance of that with when you have these battles in court, which seem to inevitably take place. I do remember, though, when Pelosi did this, they were already doing impeachment depositions in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol in Adams Schiff, and we were called to the floor to vote on a resolution to launch impeachment. So she did the same kind of thing a few years ago, and of course she did it for something that was, I thought ridiculous.
Real quick, one last question for you. I know you're super busy, Chairman. The $6 billion question. We're all hearing about this. Unfortunately, unfrozen, handed over basically to Iran on September 11th of all days. Is there anything Congress can do to refreeze that money so that it's not handed over to our enemies?
I'm sure that some of the committees that deal with, the Foreign Affairs Committee and those committees will be looking into this issue. I think the whole idea that, this happened and it was, as many people pointed out, announced on September 11th. I have concerns. What I'm really concerned about too is I hope this is not a move to move back. Remember, President Trump got us out of that Iranian deal. Let's hope it's not a move back in that direction. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Thank you.
Chairman Jordan, really appreciate your time here.
You bet. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks so very much. All right. Thanks for being a patriot. All right. We've got a lot more on this show. It's called American Sunrise, darn it. I should know the name of the show. Anyhow, coming up, bringing home the children who have gone missing and are now being exploited in sinister ways. We're talking about child trafficking. The man leading the charge to bring them home is ahead as American Sunrise continues.
This news brought to you by AMAC, Association of Pure American Citizens.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina Loudon. Great to be with you. And taking a look here now for our news that is sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Dr. G, let's start in Texas, where embattled Attorney General Ken Paxton and his lawyers will begin their defense today after prosecutors in his historic impeachment trial abruptly rested their case on Wednesday. A woman with whom Paxton reportedly had an extramarital affair was scheduled to testify, but after making a brief appearance at the trial, the woman never actually took the stand, and the bipartisan team of prosecutors rested their case. The affair was expected to be central to the case against Paxton amid accusations that he misused his power to help a real estate developer who his mistress was working for deal with an FBI investigation. Paxton hasn't attended the impeachment proceedings this week and likely won't testify. However, he did post an update on X saying that he is headed to Maine next week to talk with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson, quote, about the last 2 weeks in Texas politics. And New Mexico gun owners are dodging a proverbial bullet, this morning, as a federal judge ruled on Wednesday to block the state's 30-day gun ban. Democrat Governor Michelle Grisham's order last week to suspend, conceal, and open firearm carry rights in Albuquerque and the surrounding area set off a firestorm of protests, criticism, and lawsuits. Governor Grisham claimed the move was meant to deal with the city's out-of-control crime. On Wednesday, a U.S. District Court judge ruled that Grisham's order goes against a landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling that says that people have the right to carry a gun outside of their homes for self-defense. In his ruling, the Joe Biden-appointed judge writes simply, quote, "They just want the right to carry their guns." And Republicans in the U.S. House are considering a number of places to realize spending cuts as they push to pass a balanced and more fiscally conservative budget. Bloomberg reports one proposal being considered targets Social Security by raising the full retirement age at which seniors are entitled to their full benefits that they're due. The 176-member House Republican study group looking into this idea reportedly approved a fiscal blueprint to make this happen. It would gradually increase the full retirement age to 69 years old for seniors who turn 62 in 2033. The current FRA, as it's called, is 66 or 67, depending on when you're born. Lawmakers on either side of the aisle are working to come up with a fix for Social Security before the program's Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund runs out of money. Let's bring in Andy Mangione now. He is the Senior Vice President for the Association of Mature American Citizens, or AMAC. Andy, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is always good to see you. So let's start with Social Security. What sort of advocacy is your organization doing in regards to Social Security and, more important, its solvency?
Well, AMAC has been warning Congress for the last 10 years about the pending insolvency of Social Security. And as we sit here today, all of a sudden, we're about 10 years away from insolvency. So it's been a high priority for AMAC. And we've developed a plan called the AMAC Social Security Guarantee that would make Social Security solvent for the next 75 years without raising taxes. And it does include a gradual age setback. So it's interesting to hear you report about the Republican Study Committee's gradual age setback, because that's an element, one of the provisions in our report. We're going to continue to sound the alarm on Social Security because this is a promise that must be kept to America's seniors.
AMAC, your organization, basically considers mature American adults at 50 years old, but I suspect that this is a major issue, particularly for those in the 50 to 55-year range, because they're looking to cash in on Social Security as soon as possible.
Well, as I mentioned, it's a promise, and the promise has to be kept. And if you talk to younger generations, Generation Z, Generation Y, they don't think there's going to be a Social Security for them. They're convinced that it won't be. So this is why this is a vital issue, and it has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
What are some of the main concerns, some of the other concerns apart from Social Security that you're hearing from your members? What are some of the things that they're pushing you to advocate for, to lobby for?
Our members are concerned, again, with running out of money during their retirement. Now, we have been educating our members, and our members are fairly educated to begin with regard to specific issues in general and Social Security in particular. They don't want to run out of money. They know that Social Security is just one leg on a three-legged stool with regard to their retirement. They're counting on it. And as I mentioned before, this promise was made to seniors decades ago.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish your point. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, and the promise was made to seniors decades ago. And we are fighting on behalf of our members to make sure that they get, what they put into Social Security. They're counting on it.
In general, are you finding that some of those basic core kitchen table issues are what will drive your members to the ballot box in 2024?
Well, the kitchen table issues have really changed a little, okay. With regard I was elected. The kitchen table issues will always remain, the price of health care, the cost of drugs, the myriad issues that are surrounding health care and maintaining your health in your senior years. But now we've added things like critical race theory. Our members are telling us that they're concerned about their grandchildren, what's being taught to them in school. Our members are telling us that they are very concerned with immigration. And they're very concerned with the inflation and the economy. So these issues the core issues of the kitchen table issues remain the same, but we've heard a couple of wrinkles that have been added to these issues.
Are you at all surprised that many of the seniors that you're dealing with are now kind of pivoting, if you will, to some of these other ancillary issues that are impacting their lives, but aren't direct drivers for their quality of life?
That's a great question. And no, we're not surprised because our members are paying attention. They're hearing what's going on. I mean, everybody's eyes were opened with COVID when everybody was watching what was being taught to their children as we did teleschool. So people sat home and were watching kids being taught by Zoom meetings. They're paying attention. They're paying closer attention now. We're not surprised. We just have to be able to react and respond to our members' needs.
Andy Mangione, always appreciate the time. Always fun to talk with you. Continued success with AMAC.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. Good to see you. A major victory for teachers who refuse to comply with COVID vaccination mandates in New York City. Their story is next as American Sunrise continues. Stick around.
by the wellness company. The national blood supply has fallen nearly 25% in recent months, and it's not the zombie apocalypse, at least not yet. It's not climate change, but the Democrats will tell you it is. But the corrupt Red Cross will tell you some stories here. Look at this headline. Red Cross blames climate disasters for blood shortage. The American Red Cross blames Hurricane Idalia, which crossed Florida 2 weeks ago, saying the storm caused more than 700 units of blood and platelets to go uncollected. It's all Florida's fault, and it's all climate change's fault. Also, they said donor turnout is low this time of year, every year, because the busy travel season and the start of the new school year, so people are too busy to donate. So they admit that most donors were either on vacation or occupied with back-to-school stuff, neither of which has anything to do with climate change, Red Cross. So, David, why mention climate change at all? That's my question. Why did they have to get political? The Red Cross is already known for doing some pretty shady dealings, participating as an NGO over on the border. But now bringing up climate change really is the reason for a blood shortage?
Well, exactly. And here's the problem. And it goes to the fact that there are way too many sheep in America that will just listen to this mumbo jumbo crap and believe it. And so if you just repeat a lie over and over again, people are going to believe it. And that's exactly what's going on. Look, here's the reality. Terrance, I'm curious to get your take on this. But I mean, the statistics show that the Red Cross had a 30% drop in donors for new blood during COVID because schools were closed. And not just schools, but other facilities too. But school, you couldn't go into a school normally. So anyhow, to me, it's really all about COVID and the fact, once again, another detriment as to why COVID was not just so bad for children academically, but now we're seeing it even affecting the Red Cross.
David, I think your argument is absolutely palatable. It's a reasonable argument. I would just add to that the whole idea of putting climate change in the argument definitely is ridiculous. I could absolutely see how disasters that aren't necessarily brought on by climate change, but just natural disasters in and of themselves would use more blood in general and collect more blood, and that people may be leery or unable to donate. That's a reasonable argument. Yeah. But putting the idea of climate change into that argument, I think, makes it unreasonable and less palatable.
But here's the question. Why did they lose 700 units of blood?
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Why did they lose 700 units of blood for a hurricane where we had no human blood spilled? It makes absolutely no sense. So are they that wasteful? Is there no oversight on this kind of thing? Also, I think you just have to put into perspective that people don't trust blood anymore. People like me, I met my husband actually at a blood drive, and we used to celebrate every year by going and giving blood. We stopped because we realized how corrupt the Red Cross is, how woke they are a long time ago. And now people after COVID are looking for clean blood, right? I wouldn't donate right now if I had been donating, because if I need blood, I want to get it from a clean blood agency. And we know that COVID is taking that corrupted blood from people who've been dosed with that DNA altering material. And a lot of us don't want anything to do with that. So my guess might be if they're having problems, that might be why, or it might be because they're aiding and abetting on the corner, right? On the border, rather. All right, everyone knows the next medical crisis is just around the corner, whether it comes from in the form of a pandemic or something much more mundane like a tick bite. You and your family need to be prepared, and that's where the Wellness Company comes in. You know the Wellness Company. We have their great doctors like Peter McCullough on the show all the time. The Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust, and their new medical emergency kits are the absolute gold standard when it comes to keeping you and your family safe and healthy. Be ready for anything. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin and a Z-Pack. The medical emergency kit provides a guidebook, too, so that you know how to use all the things that are in your kit. Rest assured knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, antiparasitics on hand will help keep you and your family safe from whatever the globalists decide to throw at you next. So all you need to do, go to TWC Health/voice today and give it an order. That is TWC Health/voice. Use the promo code VOICE to save 10%. All right, David, what do you have lined up for us next?
Well, Dr. Gina, finally a story about sanity. We have so many insane stories. Here's a sanity story, and take a look at this headline that is out really now all over the place, because we have New York City teachers that have actually won in court. They have won their jobs back with back pay after refusing the COVID-19 vaccine. A judge said Wednesday that 10 employees fired by the New York City Department of Education for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine must be reinstated with back pay. And joining us now is the lead attorney on that case, Sujata Gibson. Sujata, thanks for being here. Not only I'm curious about your reaction to this, but the message that it actually sends to folks, not just in New York, but really all across the country.
Well, you know, this is a watershed victory. This case is setting precedent not only for these 10, but for thousands of others who also lost their jobs in New York City at the DOE, and the many hundreds of thousands that have lost their jobs nationwide due to these vaccine mandates. The employers get a message.
Sujata, Terrance Bates here. While these teachers are being reinstated, they're getting back pay. The damage has been done, though. Is there any way to recoup all of the life-changing damage that has been done?
That's an excellent question, and that is what we are still fighting for in court, for these 10 as well as all of the others that lost their job at the DOE.
So what are the prospects, though? What can you do? What are the expectations?
Well, you can seek pain and suffering and, you know, money for all of the people who had their homes foreclosed, who had to liquidate their retirement accounts with penalties, who had rent-controlled apartments that they had to move out of, not to mention who lost their health insurance and weren't able to afford care when they needed it.
So what is your thought on what this case in particular will mean going forward to, for example, folks in our military who've been forced to vaccinate, pilots, for example, other whole lines of work, hospital workers, the list goes on and on. What do you think, what are you hearing this will mean for other sorts of employees?
Well, look, every win helps. So what I said some time ago when we got one of our first kind of watershed wins last year was the dominoes are falling. And that really seems to be the case. So this is another big domino in the line, but there are more to come.
Yeah, and yet they continue with suggesting now that everybody be vaccinated for a strain of COVID that isn't even the predominant strain of COVID. And we're still hearing this malarkey from our government. But Sujata Gibson, we congratulate you on your victory. We wish you all the very best. We hope that you can be restored to the degree, whatever possible. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Child rescue expert Tim Ballard spent over a decade working as a special agent for the Department of Homeland Security. And while there, he was an undercover operative to the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, helping dismantle child trafficking rings in the U.S. and multiple foreign countries. His early career is the basis for the blockbuster hit movie, The Sound of Freedom, that stars Jim Caviezel. I know many of you saw it. Let's take a look at that.
You quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
There's no Marine unit coming. You're on your own. This job tears you to pieces.
As a senior advisor of the Spear Fund, Tim appeared before Congress yesterday and will again today, as a matter of fact, to testify on what the federal government can and must do to stop child sex slavery and save the lives that can be saved. He joins us now. Welcome. How are you? Tim, I don't like the term trafficking. I prefer the words, as I've told you many times in person, I like the word sex slavery because right now, we have the largest sex slave trade ever in human history, and almost no one is talking about it. I feel like the word trafficking confuses the issue because that sounds to me like a bunch of cars somewhere or something. But sex slavery, everyone can understand, and that's what's really happening. Children and women, and by the way, young boys who are often left out of this equation, not by you, but by many who have this conversation, are being raped and murdered as well. Tell us the status of things.
Well, we live in a world, unfortunately, as you know, that has more slavery than ever before in the history of the world. And so much of this is centered around U.S. policy. So much of this is centered around what's happening on our southern border. And that's the crisis we're kind of focusing on right now. I'm working with Chris Smith, a congressman from New Jersey, on a bill called the Secure Act, which is going to hold HHS, DHS accountable for what's happening to these children. What's going on is these children are showing up, unaccompanied minors as young as 5 years old, are showing up, and HHS, by policy, is releasing them to pretty much any sponsor that comes in with little to no vetting going on. It's literally more difficult in the United States to adopt a cat from a shelter than it is to go down and take one of these children out of the care and custody of HHS, and they're gone. And they're gone, and what's happening to them in a country that's #1 in consuming child rape videos. This is horrifying. Every American should be horrified. Why we are treating children in our country this way is an absolute shame.
Tim, you told Congress that the Biden regime has become a child sex slavery delivery service, as you just said to us. We're hearing, though, that, during Trump, there was this whole question of, kids in cages. They love to talk about kids in cages. Kids in cages were part of a way to separate children from possible traffickers, right? Slave traders, if you will. And that was the reason for that. Now that's been done away with for the most part. Also, the DNA tracking of people, the DNA comparisons. If this person says he's this child's father, let's do a DNA test before we let this man be with this child. That's all been done away with by the Biden regime. Have you ever had a chance to speak with any Biden officials and ask them why they've done away with these child protective policies?
I mean, I'm here on the Hill doing that right now, trying to get their attention.
But what do they say?
They don't really want to talk to me. The Democrats wouldn't even ask me a question hardly, ever. All they did was deflect to an ACLU witness to talk about family separation under the Trump administration. And I said, guys, there's a problem before us right now. Why are you deflecting? You just want to punch Trump in the face when we got kids to rescue right now? And to your point, there never were kids in cages. And whatever pictures the media was showing back then were actually under the Obama administration.
Right.
And like you said, the separation of families, I'm sure there were some tragedies and separations that shouldn't have happened. However, what was going on at that time was fake families. The traffickers were taking kidnapped children, pairing them at random with the client. Call this your kid and you're going to get right in. And they just keep keeping these kids they're using them over and over again as pawns. And so oftentimes you're separating kids from traffickers, not from their parents. And so, but the data by the dishonest media is saying, oh, they're all families that were separated. Well, how come there's 5,000 children that their families never claimed them? Well, probably because they were taken from their families in Central America long before, and their families don't know where they are. And so these are the truths that need to come out, and we have a real crisis, and children are in danger in this country. I spent 12 years rescuing children for the U.S. government. Now I have to rescue children from the U.S. government.
Wow, that is mind-blowing, Tim, and very sobering, really, to contemplate. And I want to thank you so much for clarifying what many of us understand, that those pictures that were shown, kids in cages during the Trump administration, were actually from the Obama administration. And I, as a mother, listen, if my children and I get separated, I hope they'll do DNA testing on the person, the adult who comes and claims to be their parent. I would want them to be separated from me or anyone else until it was known that this was my child. This should be natural. Everyone should want this. This is bipartisan. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. This shouldn't be a Trump issue. This is common sense. But talk to us, Tim, about the numbers. I'm looking at the numbers of military-aged men invading our country, really crossing our borders. Those numbers are growing every day. We have our border folks on the border every day, our correspondents that show us these videos of just more and more and more people coming across our border with really no impediment at this point. So I want to ask you, what are the numbers now that we have this sort of massive influx and invasion on our border? What is happening to children? What do you surmise those numbers are? What have you witnessed anecdotally from the Trump administration until now?
Well, what we witnessed is over 9 million people coming across, and not just the children. That's the important issue. But to your point, there's likely terrorists coming in. There's likely, people who will do harm to our country. Remember Mohammed Atta, who flew the planes at 9/11, he crossed over from Mexicali into California. Mm-hmm. They stage in these countries and they can get in now. So there's that issue we're dealing with. On the child issue, over 300,000 children have showed up unaccompanied, and HHS has admitted that 85,000 got lost and disappeared. I've been on that border. I spent 10 years as a special agent there. What they do is they send the kids across with a little piece of paper with a name and a number. That's the sponsor. And HHS has, by mandate, it's not their fault, by the way. Customs and Border Protection, Homeland Security agents, these are brave and amazing women and men. They do not like that they have become, by mandate from this administration, a child trafficking delivery service. But they have to call the number. And they don't vet, they don't background check, they don't fingerprint, they don't DNA. They call that number, and if the guy says, yeah, Jose Gonzalez, this sweet little 7-year-old boy, yeah, he's mine. Okay, don't even come pick him up anymore. We'll send him to you. We're putting them with our taxpayer dollars on planes, trains, and automobiles, and we are delivering the child to an unknown person, entity. 100 kids showed up not long ago in San Antonio. 100 kids to one address. This is not... These aren't people doing good by these children.
No.
These are traffickers.
No. And the story is so much worse than we even have time to go into. I'm upset that I'm up against a break because I have, honestly, 10 more questions for you. But Tim Ballard, I want you to know this audience prays for you, prays for this work, prays for these children. And by the grace of God, at some point, we will end this tragedy in America. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Up next, it's time for our Stay Awake, Not Woke segment. As Stacey Gates is the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, she's been outspoken about her hatred of private schools, even going so far as to call them fascist. So why is her own kid enrolled in one then? Well, that story's ahead as American Sunrise continues. Welcome back, everybody. I loved Jingus's comment. Jingus in the chat said, Jesus said, let the little children come unto me and do not hinder them. That's from Matthew 19:14. You know, I don't think it would be a bad idea ever to read over some of the verses in the Bible regarding children and pray for these children that are being sold into sex slavery and living in sex slavery, as Tim Ballard mentioned. All right, it is time for our Stay Awake, Not Woke segment. Stay Awake, Not Woke, sponsored by Beard Vet Coffee, beardvet.com. Use your promo code RAV for your 10% off. All right, in the spotlight today, the Woke Chicago Teachers Union president, you guys. Stacey Davis Gates is her name. She's been very outspoken about the evils of private schools. She called private schools fascist and also racist. But then, lo and behold, this woke union president is a hypocrite. This hypocritical teachers union president actually sends her own child to a private school in Chicago while telling you and other Chicago residents that they're evil for doing so. Stacey Davis Gates appeared on CNN and was asked why she sends her child to a private school while trashing those who choose not to send their children to failing Chicago public schools, some of the worst, murder capital, right? And this was her answer.
Why then send your child to a private school after speaking out so publicly against them?
I didn't speak out against private schools. I spoke out against school choice. School choice and private schools are two different entities.
So, David, work this out for me. School choice, choosing to send your child to a private school is different than sending your child to a private school. Can you do this lib logic for me?
No, I can't. Back to you, Gina. No, of course I can't. And here's the thing. You're like, work this out for me. Yeah, no, I can't work out anything. This is literally like the Etch-a-Sketch that has gone like bizarre and wacko. Here's the thing. She calls private schools fascist and then sends her kids to or sends one of her children to a fascist school. That's what school choice, by the way, is all about. That you can send your kid anywhere. And here's the thing. As I took a deeper dive in this, because I've got nothing better to do as I eat my oatmeal, I noticed that 4 out of 10, 40% of teachers in the Chicago Teachers Union send their kids to private school. 40%. Talk about hypocrisy. It's not just her. It's so many of them. Terrance.
So that says that 40% of teachers in Chicago public schools likely don't have much confidence in the school system in which they work. Right. And the whole idea of school choice is that you as a parent have the choice to send your kid to a performing school of your choice, which is exactly what the teachers union president is doing. Well, drop the mic. Sorry, we gotta go.
Yes, drop the mic. There are charter schools, there are other schools. I mean, it may be more than 4 out of 10 is my point.
Yeah. So up next, folks, we're going to take a quick break here, but our moment of faith is coming up. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo shares his thoughts on Israel's importance to American Christianity. It's an important topic and an interesting one. We'll talk about it when we come back.
And you're looking at the cesspool, Washington, D.C. Mike Pompeo knows a few things about Washington, D.C. He was, of course, the former Secretary of State, former director of the CIA under President Trump, and he loves Israel. He is a big Christian. That sounds weird. Anyhow, he's an evangelical Christian who loves Israel. He spent a lot of time in the homeland. He was instrumental in helping get the embassy moving to Jerusalem, and, of course, got out of the Iran nuclear deal, helped in the situation there. We know President Trump obviously responsible for all of that. Here's Mike Pompeo recently after a trip to Israel and the importance of Israel when it comes to the Christian faith.
I just remember thinking to myself how deeply connected our faith is to the land, to this place, and to these people. And we should never forget the centrality of Judea and Samaria to our faith. And so it reinforced my understanding of the specialness of the place, the specialness of the nation of Israel, and its centrality to us as believers in Jesus Christ.
You know, Mike Pompeo is a real interesting guy. He was number one in his class at West Point, and there's just so much to talk about. You know, Terrance, I think what's interesting here is that Mike Pompeo really did champion Israel in many of his not just statements but actions, and he has a love for that country. And if you read the Bible, this just in, liberals, leftists, I should call them, if you start all the way back in Genesis, Israel and ultimately Christianity, it's all really connected, very much so.
It's intertwined, and even from a political perspective, Israel is probably our closest ally in the Middle East, in that region, and its stability is the stability of that region in general. And so that's why the United States foreign policy and Israel is so closely intertwined as well.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, I attended at the Museum of the Bible this week. I attended a movie premiere that's going to be out across the country this weekend. It's called Route 60, the Biblical Highway, and it was just fascinating. Put on by TBN, the folks at Trinity Broadcasting Network. Anyhow, so that'll be out theaters this weekend, and Mike Pompeo is part of that, along with Ambassador David Friedman. So looking forward to all of that. Look, we've got a lot more on American Sunrise. We're just getting cooking. We're just getting started. That's such a boomer term. We're just getting cooking. Anyhow, back in a moment with the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm going to put on some more makeup. Back in a moment. Ahead on American Sunrise, Corey Lewandowski, one of President Trump's most trusted advisors, now helping Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign with, we should add, President Trump's blessing. Corey's going to be here with details and his take on the looming Biden impeachment inquiry.
A bombshell announcement from Utah Senator Mitt Romney after 2 decades in politics, including a presidential run. The senator says that he will step aside, making way for a younger generation to take their place on the Hill. In moments, reaction from one of the candidates vying for Mitt Romney's seat.
And Kamala Harris embarking on her so-called Fight for Our Freedoms college tour to rally support for Gen Z voters in an attempt to get her boss, and by extension herself, reelected. But is it too little and too late? That story and more ahead on this second hour of American Sunrise. We've got your back as you start your day.
Articulating what the majority of Americans feel today, and I really appreciate that you do.
Y'all tell the truth.
You guys are our voice.
We watch every morning while getting ready for work.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina. We have T. Bates in the house with us in the West Palm Beach studio, here with us all week. How blessed are we?
It is my blessing. You guys have better weather than Denver right now, particularly this time of year.
Really?
And of course, I've got this sunshine across the studio from me. Mwah, right back at you. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, let's also, Terrance, bring in David Brody. He's lost down in the swamp. We're so sorry, David, that you can't be here having fun with us in the Palm Beaches, but we love you anyway.
Well, and I love you both, and I wish I could get out of the swamp. I need to get out of the swamp, and I'll do so soon. It was a great first hour. Congressman Jim Jordan was here. You can catch it on Getter, of course, and Rumble. Just keep watching the replays. I get paid by the minute, so please, if you watch it, I'll get more money. What do I care? Just kidding. I don't get any money for that. That was fake news. But you know who doesn't have fake news? You knew the transition was coming, Terrance Bates.
Oh, here it is.
Hold on.
I feel a Brody transition coming.
Hold on, David, Gina, do you guys feel that? Do you feel it?
What was that?
That jolt that you actually felt, or that jolt, that was a good transition. I was trying to reel you guys in. That jolt that you just felt, folks, was the spin zone, and it's coming from the White House as President Biden is set to deliver what the White House describes as a major economic speech today. It's going to be President Biden's first chance to respond to the Republican-led effort to impeach him, but instead, Mr. Biden is expected to focus on the impact of the federal budget cuts and a looming government shutdown. While those are real issues with the government set to run out of money in about 16 calendar days, many Americans are also focused on the allegations of corruption, which is a real issue against the commander-in-chief. As for the budget, though, House Republicans are calling for spending cuts to the levels of about $120 billion less than what President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy agreed upon back in May. And the other likely 2024 presidential candidate, Donald Trump, is increasing the likelihood that he will be the Republican nominee. A new Quinnipiac poll has the 45th president boasting his biggest lead yet over second-place challenger Ron DeSantis. Here are the numbers. Take a close look. President Trump has recently added 5 points to his lead, bringing his support to 62% compared to DeSantis' 12%. That number, by the way, marks a 6-point loss for the Florida governor. President Trump is also touting these numbers on Truth Social this morning, writing, "Great poll numbers, thank you." And apart from his poll numbers, President Trump is also keeping an eye on Texas's ongoing impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton. Just hours ago, Mr. Trump posting on Truth Social, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton was easily reelected last November, but now establishment rhinos are trying to undo that election with the shameful impeachment of him. Who would replace Paxton, one of the toughest and best attorney generals in the country? Could it be a Democrat, or even worse, a rhino? Paxton will begin to mount his defense today after the prosecution abruptly rested its case on Wednesday without the testimony of a woman believed to be central to the allegations against Paxton. The woman in question was reportedly Paxton's mistress and central to the case against him amid accusations that he misused his power to help a real estate developer who that woman worked for deal with an FBI investigation. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming your way here in just a little bit. But David, what do you have lined up next?
Well, we're going to get to Corey Lewandowski in a moment. I will say this, though. The Ken Paxton thing is interesting because, let's be honest, he doesn't trust the federal government. That ultimately is what this is all about. It reminds me, obviously, of Trump. You know, if you're going to go against the narrative, you're going to be in the crosshairs of the deep state. And it even plays out in Texas. And, you know, Gina, we're seeing this time and time again that if you speak out like a Paxton or whatever, it will definitely be a problem for you politically.
Right. You know, one of the interesting things that I was thinking about last night, psychologically speaking, it used to be that when you spoke out about anything in government, they would come behind the scenes and kind of threaten you. And we knew this would happen. Like, I remember one time in particular, my husband said, oh, they're taking that guy out because they've got something on his kid. You know, like a maybe some sexual something that his kid did, and they're taking him, they threatened him with it, and they got him gone. That used to happen all the time. I'm glad that we are in a day and age, this is just one thing to be thankful for, where there's enough transparency that we usually see exactly the corruption playing out in front of us. Like, we see it, we know. It's very hard to keep secrets these days, and I kind of like that.
Well, for sure. And Corey Lewandowski knows all about the deep state. He wrote a book on it. He is now joining us here on American Sunrise. Corey, thanks for being here. We have a lot to talk to you about, including Trump, the deep state, and the Biden inquiry. But first, you know, Vivek Ramaswamy, who, by the way, will be on this show tomorrow. You're helping him with Trump's blessing. Tell us a little bit about that interesting dynamic. I mean, you used to be, obviously, Trump's former campaign manager.
Yeah, you know, David, it's thanks for having me this morning. And look, the truth is, like many individuals, I'm just a volunteer, right? I think I have some core competency of understanding how the primary electorate works. We saw that in 2015 and 2016 when the media told us that Donald Trump had no chance to win. And the truth is, I traveled last weekend with Donald Trump to South Dakota and to Iowa, and I continue to see the enormous support that President Trump is going to have. And so, look, my support for a candidate, and I don't get paid by any of them, is because I have a lot of friends in the race. And so when candidates and campaign professionals want to call and ask for advice, I'm happy to give that. But I can assure you, David and Dr. Loudon, as we sit here, Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee for president in 2024.
So that begs the question, Corey, that everyone in our chat is asking. Is Vivek just running for a cabinet position? And wouldn't it be better, a lot of people ask, to not take anything away from this massive fight that Donald Trump has in front of him? You know, all the money it's taking, all of the time it's taking away from him being able to maybe just completely save up and to run against the Democrats, whoever that ultimately is. Wouldn't it be better for Vivek to have deferentially stayed out of that, maybe even campaigned for Donald Trump in a prominent way, rather than to take anything away from him by, you know, being part of a primary race against him? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, my thought is the party should be unified, right? The party should be unified around Donald Trump. He has, in some places, a 40, 50, or even 60-point lead amongst the Republican electorate. You know, they're saying now that Donald Trump's lead is shrinking in Iowa because he's only up 40 points. OK, Donald Trump is going to be the Republican. I think we have to focus all of our efforts on the general election and remind the American people of the failures of the Biden administration. Let's get past this primary process. Let's unify. I've seen elected officials like Chris Sununu and others come out and say that as the field whittles down, Donald Trump is going to lose. That is not true. Donald Trump continues to receive a vast majority of the support. And as other candidates get out, that support will only grow. It's time to get behind Donald Trump.
And Corey, Ron DeSantis' poll numbers continue to plummet. He's down 5 points in this latest poll, and it just keeps going down. I know the century is relatively new, but is this the biggest political miscalculation of our new century? I mean, he looked in the mirror, saw a president, saw the timing was right, but the timing was never right. And it seems to me to be a huge miscalculation on DeSantis' part that could actually burn him in future years.
David, I think this is the curse of the Republican governor of Florida, right? This is the same problem that Jeb Bush had. He woke up in the morning, thought that he was going to be the president. His campaign blew through $150 million out of Super PAC. Consultants got rich, and Jeb was out of the race by South Carolina. The path seems to be repeating itself for Governor DeSantis. And I think if Governor DeSantis would have waited, he would have had an enormous opportunity 4 years down the road to have a significant impact long term for this country. I think this race has fundamentally hurt him long term. And more than that, what we're seeing, David, once again, is donor money being spent and somebody getting rich at the politician's expense.
Yeah.
Corey Lewandowski, thank you so much for being with us. We always appreciate your insight.
You bet, guys. Good morning.
Up next, Utah Rhino Senator Mitt Romney drops a bombshell announcement and says that he's going to retire. MAGA Nation, gleeful. One of the people vying for his seat joins us as American Sunrise continues. The Drain the Swamp segment here, sponsored by Sea of Mud, seaofmud.com. Use promo code RAV1776 for 15% off. This is a rural American patriotic apparel company, American made. They have much more than shirts. They have knives, drinkware, swimwear. Terrance loves it. Lots of jewelry. Miranda loves that. Our whole team loves to go through this website and check it out, and you should too. Our swamp story today, when you think of Jeffrey Epstein, you think of a swamp that's not in D.C., but rather in Manhattan, right here in Palm Beach, Florida, or in the Virgin Islands. But you may want to think again. Some new evidence that the two may not be as far removed as you'd think. Take a look at this headline. It reads, J.P. Morgan allegedly notified the government of $1 billion in transactions related to human sex trafficking by Epstein, and this is according to a lawyer. The financial activity was reported as, quote, suspicious to the Treasury Department in 2019. This is after Epstein died behind bars, and probably only because he had already died behind bars. But the reports were only made public this week as the U.S. Virgin Islands is suing J.P. Morgan Chase for enabling Epstein's sex trafficking enterprise. David, it's taken this long for this to be revealed. Will we ever know the tip of the iceberg about Epstein and his pedo clients? I want a list.
Yeah, I want a list too. And here's the thing. This is about the powerful hiding the powerful. I mean, look, it's 16 years. 16 years, J.P. Morgan officials had this information, did absolutely, let's be honest, did absolutely nothing about it. They're actually being sued and all of that over it. But that's a good example of the powerful hiding the powerful. And then the Treasury Department, now all of a sudden we find out, knew about it since 2019. So the federal government and high-rolling bankers knew all about Jeffrey Epstein's transactions from a sex and child trafficking, slavery, as you say, Gina, standpoint. I mean, it doesn't take, Terrance, a rocket scientist to put two and two together here, and this is why people don't trust not just the federal government, but they know there's a lot of powerful people behind what's really going on here.
And there are questions being raised about governments even abroad. You mentioned the fact that the U.S. Virgin Islands has launched its own investigation into J.P. Morgan Chase, but there was an attorney general years back who really kind of initiated this investigation and was told to stand down and ultimately fired as the result of her investigation and looking into this case. Now, finally, it sounds like we're going to get closer to some sort of closure and more information and potentially having this list of clients released. But it's a shame that it has taken this long and that so many people have been hurt in the process when there were people years ago who were looking into these cases and, again, told to stand down and ultimately fired because they were asking some really pertinent questions and questions that people didn't want answered.
Yeah, no doubt. One interesting point on this is right here in South Florida, of course, the Epstein Mansion is here where a lot of these horrific acts took place. My family took our boat over to see it not that long ago, about a year ago, and it's not that far from our house, ironically, and the home had been leveled. It is not there any longer, which is kind of nice, and I believe the property was put up for sale. I don't know. Last I checked, it was not sold. It may be by now, but I can't even imagine buying that property. I feel like evil spirits abound. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just,
Well, here's my Jeffrey Epstein story, though that sounds weird, just the fact that I said it like that.
I'm just going to stop you. Yes, it does. It sounds really weird.
Let me rephrase the beginning part of that sentence now that I think about it. But I was in the U.S. Virgin Islands about, 10 years or so ago. I was doing a story, and I was on the island of St. John. And you have to take a ferry to get over to St. John. They don't have any airport. So we're coming back from St. John to the mainland, and someone says, "Look over there." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "That's Epstein Island." And there it was. I saw it. It was Epstein Island. And of course, at that point, I'm like, "Could you quickly take me to the mainland? Because I don't want to be anywhere near that island." But I actually saw Epstein Island. And, the sad part is I don't want to know exactly what went on. I do want to know what went on there because there's a lot more questions that still need to be answered.
Well, we're going to leave the conversation there for now, guys. We'll have, of course, more American Sunrise on the other side of this break.
American sunrise. Utah Senator Mitt Romney made an announcement that shook up Capitol Hill. He announced he will be retiring, and here is the reason he gave for his retirement.
I considered my age and the fact that at the end of a second term I would be in my mid-80s, and I think it's time for guys like me to get out of the way and have people in the next generation step forward, because they're going to be shaping the world they're going to be living in.
We can just pretend like that's an endorsement of a guest we have coming up in the show, Mayor Trent Skaggs. He's vying for Romney's seat. But first, Terrance Bates standing by with some economic news. T, take it away.
Dr. G, U.S. consumer prices in August increased by the largest margin in more than a year. The Labor Department is trying to make sense of these extra dollars being spent, saying a surge in gas prices is to blame here. As a result, the consumer price index spiked by 0.6 of a percentage point last month, marking the largest gain since June of last year. And what the Labor Department considers a moderate rise in inflation could ultimately encourage the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates on hold during its meeting next Wednesday. The Fed has raised interest rates 11 times since last year in an effort to cool inflation. And David, Brody, inflation remains a key issue for voters. Of course, it's apparently an issue that Utah Senator Mitt Romney doesn't want to deal with anymore, as he will not seek re-election.
No, he's out, and MAGA Nation rejoices. The party's at my house tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. But seriously, Romney, look, the party has passed Romney. I mean, it's very clear. Populism taking over, conservatism, the traditional conservatism is long gone at this point, and there's a reason for that, which we can get into in another time. But I want to play a little bit from Mitt Romney yesterday, because he talked, in essence, took a swipe at MAGA. Have a look.
My wing of the party talks about policy and about issues that will make a difference to the lives of the American people. The Trump wing of the party talks about resentments of various kind and getting even and settling scores and revisiting the 2020 election. What are the policies for the future? And my party is only going to be successful getting young people to vote for us if we're talking about the future. And that's not happening so far in that other wing.
All right, well, there's a lot more to talk about. Terrance, we're going to bring in the mayor of Riverton, Utah, who is running against Mitt Romney, running to replace, Mitt Romney. My goodness, let me start that again, Trent Skaggs. Trent, thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit more about Romney's retirement, your reaction, because you got into the race before this all happened.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've been in the race now 3.5 months, and we were not shy at all about taking on Mitt. From day one, we called out his record. I've been traveling the state, and we've built an enormous coalition. I mean, we've got national conservatives like Mark Levin and Charlie Kirk, Harmeet Dillon, that have endorsed our campaign. And then I've got scores of my colleagues, mayors, city council members, county commissioners that have just really rallied around us and supporting us. And it's more than this voting record. I've been saying it's also his lack of representation. He's not from Utah originally. Mm-hmm. He seemingly is so disinterested in representing us. I mean, I've talked to so many elected officials here that you could hardly get a meeting with him. And I think it's that clip you just played about him saying that it's the Trump wing of the party, ego, vengeance. I mean, hey, look, Mitt, it would be much more credible if you weren't entirely motivated by ego and vengeance. I mean, at every point he's had the chance to take on Donald Trump, President Trump, he's attempted to do that. And voters here in Utah are just tired of it. I mean, let's stop that. Yeah. Let's actually try to fight for everyday average Utahns and Americans. And that has not been Mitt's record at all, especially with this atrocious spending, the budget that's out of control, and the inflation that's come as a result. That's what I'm hearing.
Mayor Skaggs, Terrance Bates here. You were telling me earlier in the break as we were kind of chit-chatting that you're not at all surprised about the move that he will not be running for re-election. But does this open the door for you in terms of an opportunity now to reshape Utah politics, if you will?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity. I've been traveling the state. What I've been hearing is that Utahns, we're a very conservative state. And we want another Mike Lee, if you will. We want somebody who's truly going to represent Utahns and their values. And we don't have that in the current junior senator, Mitt Romney. I will provide that. I've demonstrated that in my 10 years in elected office, running my community. I've demonstrated that I'm somebody who will push back against the establishment. We need people like that with backbone, with proven ability, that are going to say enough is enough. We have to be able to get our government under control and get this return to federalism that we so desperately need.
You know, one of the interesting comments from Romney, and there were a few, he talked about, in essence, the MAGA voters, that wing of the party having resentment. But what he doesn't address, which is the most important part, is why there is resentment. Because there is resentment. Absolutely. They're angry. They're resentful of politicians who haven't fulfilled their promises, that are not interested so much in we the people, but we the politicians. And so that seems to be the big disconnect, because the trust in our politicians, in our federal government, in the deep state, and all of that has just morphed into something we didn't see as much during the Reagan years, for sure. And therefore, we're in a populist state today in the Republican Party, as opposed to the traditional conservative Ronald Reagan model from 30 years ago. I'm curious to get your take about the metamorphosis of the Republican Party today.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, that trust is at an all-time low, and I think deservedly so. As I'm talking to Utahns again, traveling the state, that's what they're commenting on. I mean, look, Mitt Romney moved to Utah 6 years ago. 5 years ago, he runs, and he has a spot that says, I will fight for you every day. I'll put us on a path to a balanced budget. I'll end illegal immigration, he claimed. I'll stop federal spending and overreach. I'll appoint conservative justices. His record is the complete opposite of that. So people are understandably frustrated, and they have this establishment ruling class right now in Washington, D.C., the majority of the elected officials there, Republican or Democrat right now, I dare say, that just don't care about the interests of those whom they are supposed to be elected to represent. They are more concerned with preserving their own power and pushing forth their own agenda. And that's got to stop. I feel that it will. I feel like we are finally moving in that direction, and I'm proud to be that MAGA candidate. They talked about me on across media yesterday, and I am just excited to move this agenda forward that Trump has put in place.
Mayor Staggs, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for taking some time out to join us here on American Sunrise this morning.
Thank you.
All right, folks, let's shift gears a little bit and get to our economic headlines, brought to you by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
And folks, you're hearing the bell ringing right now. The markets are now open. The Dow in the green, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ all starting on a positive note this morning. That is a good start to this Thursday morning. Let's hope that this rally continues. In the meantime, the clock is ticking, and workers at the country's big three automakers are preparing to walk off the job over the next 24 hours if there is no deal reached. Detroit automakers have reportedly offered the United Auto Workers Union 146,000 workers a pay raise of up to 20% over 4.5 years. That's less, though, than half of what the union is calling for. As a result, the union's president says there is a plan in place for targeting individual U.S. auto plants with a series of strikes, marking the first ever simultaneous strike against Detroit's big three car manufacturers. While no company-wide walkouts are planned at this point, union leaders say the strike effort will escalate if negotiations don't improve. Tragedy can happen at any moment, and that's why it's smart to invest in emergency food right now. As they say, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. My Patriot Supply is the nation's leader in high-quality emergency food. Head to preparewithrav.com and you'll save $200 on your 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Enjoy a wide variety of delicious meals offering over 2,000 calories every day for optimal strength under stress. Stock up before panic sets in and the grocery store shelves are bare. Free shipping is also automatic and your order ships fast. So again, go to preparewithrav.com. That's preparewithrav.com and place your order and take advantage of the discount. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Kamala Harris is about to embark on a whirlwind Embrace the Woke tour to college campuses around the country. So, can we say out of touch and tone deaf? I can. I'm sure you can as well. We'll talk more about that when we come back.
It's Southern at its finest. It's red, white, and blue. You gotta get out and try it. Red State Barbecue. Red State Barbecue.
This segment sponsored by Red State Barbecue. RedStateBarbecue.com. Use promo code RAV10 for 10% off. Yesterday, I put the Alabama sauce.
Okay, the Alabama short horse, yeah.
The horsey, yeah. I put it.
You said the horsey.
So Zen brought in sandwiches for all of us, and I tried the Alabama horsey on
on your sandwich?
On my sandwich. It was fantastic. Okay. I just wanted to add that. I love the apple bourbon, as everybody knows. I love the Texas spicy. They're all good. That's the thing. RedStateBarbecue.com, promo code RAV10. You get your 10% off, right?
It is good, folks. Trust me. Trust me. And this
Terrance and I have been eating a lot.
Exactly. This is coming from the chubby guy, so trust the chubby guy. All right, folks, let's get to our big story today. Polls confirm that President Biden's age is a growing concern for voters, and that might actually indicate his odds of reaching young voters in his bid for re-election. Well, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I think there are many more challenges apart from age, but we'll just start there.
A lot of challenges, yes.
And that's why his running mate, Vice President Kamala Harris, is taking the presidential show on the road on a pseudo mission of damage control. Here's the headline. All right. Vice President Harris is heading on an Embrace the Woke tour of college campuses with an agenda that pushes back on GOP presidential candidates like DeSantis and Ramaswamy. That right there, again, is the headline. The so-called Fight for Our Freedoms college tour has Harris visiting a dozen schools over the next month or so to rally support from Gen Z voters. But here's the thing. Kamala is going to be talking about abortion, gun reform, climate change, gender and sexuality issues, and, of course, book bans. The White House says that those issues, quote, disproportionately impact young people. Plus, Dr. G, she may throw in a STEM lecture here and there, maybe even pull out a Venn diagram.
Yeah, you know, I could see it happening. You know that she'll be melodramatic, and you know she'll say a lot, since Miranda's not here, I'm just going to try, a lot about things that have something to do with things.
You know what?
That's all you're going to get
That brings to memory this moment.
AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters. It means artificial intelligence.
You know what? Mama said if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Mama said if you can't say anything nice, just play a clip.
There you go.
Yeah.
So play a clip, and then, David, I yield to you, sir.
This just in, AI is 2 letters. And Biden is like, really? It is? But anyhow, look, here's the thing. This is their only play. I mean, Kamala Harris is not going to East Palestine, right? I mean, she's not doing a tour of blue-collar voters across the country because Democrats have lost the blue-collar vote by and large in this country. So they have to go to college campuses. The problem for the Biden administration, or sort of the Biden regime, as Gina likes to call them, and I need to really adopt that language. That is correct, Gina. The Biden regime. The problem here is that the numbers are way down. I mean, when it comes to Gen Z, 16% less of them support Biden than they did like 2 years ago. So that number is going way down. Yeah. And then there's this interesting poll, 73% of college Democrats, 73% of college Democrats don't want to see Biden run again in 2024. So knock yourself out, Kamala, but that is a major uphill climb.
You know, David, how I like to flip around. You know, it's a TV network, so we have lots of TV screens, and sometimes they'll put several things up on the TV screen, and I like to flip around and look at what the crazies are saying out there. And one of the things I saw in Morning Joe this morning was him saying, I flip around. Was him saying that what he's hearing in private from Democrats about Joe Biden's potential presidential run is completely different from what they're saying on his show. And he is challenging them to say the same thing in private as they're saying on air. I think that is a very interesting admission from somebody who calls himself a conservative, which is laughable. Joe is one of the most left-wing crazies out there, but interesting.
You know, I hate to put this out in the air, and I'm just going to end on this. I wonder if privately there are Democrats out there who are hoping Joe Biden, and I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say it, won't survive, if you will.
Yeah.
And he naturally will be out of the race, and so it's not something they have to contend with. Like, I've really been thinking about that a lot, whether privately there are Democrats that are hoping, okay, well, something happened to him so we don't have to contend with this.
Well, and don't forget, if the top of the ticket doesn't do well, a lot of Democrats are going to go down. Yep. So there are Democrats who have very personal, very political stake in this. All right, another saucy story. AI, Kamala, now appears to be more of a real thing when it comes to 2024. In today's segment, 2024 is getting pretty saucy. Could this be a recipe for disaster, or could it serve as a valuable tool to help voters choose from a long list of candidates on the 2024 menu? Take a look at this headline from Real Clear Politics. Dawn of the AI presidential candidate, meet the Chat 2024 clones, a new project that called Chat 2024 rolled out avatars of each major presidential candidate this week. Wow. This allows voters to ask them anything. Wow. A Miami company called Delphi reportedly secured more than $2.5 million in its investment last week to offer to voters. The 27-year-old founder of this company says the AI candidates base their answers on information compiled by hundreds of speeches, op-eds, and statements. So
I don't trust it.
So here's the question. Is this helpful or hurtful? And more importantly, is it trustworthy? But before you answer, David and Big T, remember this AI-generated Trump ad, right? The DeSantis PAC Never Back Down released this back in July. It received quite a bit of a blowback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, watch.
Governor Kim Reynolds is a conservative champion. She signed the heartbeat bill and stands up for Iowans every day. So why is Donald Trump attacking her?
I opened up the governor position for Kim Reynolds, and when she fell behind, I endorsed her, did big rallies, and she won. Now she wants to remain neutral. I don't invite her to events.
Trump should fight Democrats, not Republicans. What happened to Donald Trump? Never Back Down is responsible for the content of this advertising.
David, you remember that one?
Oh, I remember it. This is not good. This is not good at all. We have enough fake news out there. The last thing we need is more of this AI stuff that's generated, because the problem is, and I mean, this is obvious to anybody, the problem is we're not going to know what's fake and what's real. I mean, because it's going to be so close to a potential statement that one of the candidates said, but it might not be their exact words. It might be a sentiment, but it might not be their exact words. That's the problem. And here's the other problem. They're now, it's not just going to be a chat 2024. The developer of the software is now wants to go to the next step, which is voice activated chat 2024.
Sure.
So in other words, you can actually have a conversation with this fake Trump and this fake DeSantis and this fake Biden, and all of a sudden I can see it on TikTok and all these other places. Hey, Biden said that, Trump said that. No, they didn't. Yes, they did. No, they didn't. The last thing we need in this country, guys, is this. But it's happening and it's real.
And the AI generated avatar will then come up with a fake explanation or a fake policy position based on your own biases, based on your own position in order to try to lure you in or endear you to whatever candidate it is that you're trying to communicate with. It's just not healthy for the country. It's not genuine, and it's going to really, I think it's going to disenfranchise the electorate because they're not going to know what's real and what's fake.
That's part of it, the cynicism that they love to breed, by the way, because they would like all of the voters to be disengaged and cynical, because then they have a better chance at controlling things. But I think the other thing is nuances. You know, it's not just what someone says, it's the tone, it's the authenticity with which they say it, it's the trustworthy mannerisms. I talk a lot about, because my background in psychology, I talk a lot about body language, and body language is when the best communication happens when your words you say are congruent with the facial expressions you have, are congruent with the mannerisms you have. We've talked a lot about how Ron DeSantis, one of the things about him is he does this weird thing like this, and it doesn't make sense. It's not congruent, right? The body language. So what if they just take that away for their AI version of Ron DeSantis? Or what if they just add some incongruencies in the Donald Trump? Or what if it's just nuanced facial expressions they add to these AI characters? This should be patently illegal. This should not be able to happen without something flashing across your screen that says this is not real.
David, by the way, that whole term, congruent, just really quickly, I just studied that in my child's 8th grade math class. That's the only reason I understood what she was saying. The whole math. Go ahead, David. You were saying.
Listen. When it gets to 3 syllables, I'm out. I mean, I've got no idea. But look, here's the thing. You made a good point, Terrance, about the disenfranchised aspect to this. And Gina, your point about congruency was actually spot on. I agree with all of that. The disenfranchised portion of it is we have an electorate that is exacerbated. I mean, they're already ready to throw up their hands in the air and go, I'm tired of all these bums. Throw them all out. I don't want to deal with any of this anymore. There's so much information out there, and I don't know what to believe, what not to, or what to believe and what not to believe. And then we're going to add more. So at that point, we're going to have a problem with voters getting to the polls and actually doing their I believe it's a constitutional duty. I know technically it's not, but doing their due diligence and their duty to country to actually get out and vote. But we're making it harder, I think, this way, and that's not a good thing.
To your point, and I just want to add this, please. We already don't trust our elections.
Right.
Now we can't trust the people we're trying to elect because of AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that just hit me.
Right.
Wow.
And the money that's behind this is going to be appalling. Imagine you can get an interview anytime you want with any candidate and you're a reporter. Think about that. I mean, the list goes on and on of how this gets very dangerous very fast. Up next, time to spill some tea. Ahead in the cup, MSNBC's Joy Reid and a whole lot of woke. We'll be right back at you. Stay where you are.
Freedom-loving patriots are falling in love with America's barbecue sauce, Red State Barbecue. Red State's 8 different sauces are perfect for whatever sparks your barbecue palate. Visit redstatebbq.com. That's redstatebbq.com and use promo code RAV10 for 10% off. Red State Barbecue. Let's spill some tea.
Let's do it. Sponsored by Artillery Tea Company, artilleryteaco.com. Use your promo code RAV for 10% off. Now, Artillery Tea, got to tell you about it. It's all natural. It's whole leaf. Did you smell it? It's amazing. Smell this one too. Chemical-free. Each tea bag can be used two times. And Artillery Tea Company is family-owned, veteran-owned, and operated. A portion of your purchase goes to help veterans and first responder charities.
And artilleryteaco.com is where you can go to order, but use the promo code RAV for 10% off. Again, that's the promo code RAV. You can get 10% off.
And the tea today. Are you a Christian? Well, are you pro-life? Do you think books in school libraries should be age appropriate? Well, we are, and we're not happy with the next headline. Check this one out. Joy Reid from MSNBC, MSDNC, used her Today Show to compare religious conservatives to slave traders. Yes, she did. The segment was called, quote, The Origins of White Supremacy, and she equated conservative views on issues like book banning with the desire to, quote, distort history. And then she described historic origins of conservative views from her own distorted brain. Listen.
When you look at the sometimes violent history of organized religion, from the slave trade to the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, and the Salem witch trials, to the religion-based conflicts and conquest in places like Israel, Palestine, or the emergence, again, per Robbie Jones, of right-wing Christianity-based white supremacy here in the U.S., it should not surprise you that the base of support for far-right policies on banning books and distorting history, on abortion, on LGBTQ issues, even support for cults like QAnon and the cult of personality around Donald Trump, are grounded in religious extremism.
All right, we don't have time to unpack all of the lies that were historical that she referenced, but it doesn't seem like her producers did either. It's offensive. It assumes all conservatives are white supremacists, right? Terrance, why do people watch people like her who race bait and divide incessantly when, under the auspices, though, of that they wish we all got along harmoniously. There's nothing about what she just said that wishes we got along harmoniously.
I'll answer that question simply by saying that as a consumer of any sort of news, any sort of information, you've got to be critical, you've got to be discerning, and you have to be informed yourself in order to realize that what you're hearing is either ridiculous or has merit in and of itself. And so that would be the challenge then, to be a discerning viewer, to be someone who is personally informed in order to be able to have true perspective on what you're hearing.
Yeah, but David, here's the thing. People that are listening to this that are maybe new to politics, that are young, they're always going to fall for a certain percentage of this malarkey, right?
Yeah, they are. And Joy Reid and all of us, we have a responsibility, not to the viewers for sure, to give fair, accurate information, but also perspective. And she's not giving the full perspective. There is something to be said about organized religion. There have been a lot of hate committed in the name of organized religion. But let's be clear, organized religion, as it relates to, let's say, Christianity, the Crusades, has nothing to do with a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Religion is man-made. So religion is not necessarily a good thing, okay? Because it's man-made and it's a bunch of rules and regulations. But when you're talking about a personal relationship with Christ, that's much different. Also, let me just quickly say, this is what the left does with book banning. I mean, what they're saying about book banning is not true, and everybody starts to believe the narrative. I mean, Barnes & Noble has a section of banned books. In other words, they're like, hey, come to Barnes & Noble and check out our book banning section. I'm thinking, wait a minute, if the book is banned, how do you have a book banning section? That makes no sense. The books are not banned. Schools have a right to decide, or school districts have a right to decide what is age appropriate and what is not. That is not book banning. There is a huge difference, and we owe it to the viewers to be able to tell them that and tell them that accurately.
Yeah, while they are actually banning books. If there's one thing that should be banned, it is perhaps that frock that she was wearing. In fact, her whole fashion presence, but that's another issue. Sunny Side Up is coming up next.
The shade, Dr.
We've got
Gina.
the sun coming.
The shade.
We're going to show you what celebrity is crashing weddings these days. Stick around. More American Sunrise right after this.
Tired of the same old mass-produced, globalist-supporting tea companies? Artillery Tea Company is the Patriot source of natural premium tea. Visit artillerytco.com and use promo code RAD for 10% off.
Welcome back, everyone. Time for Sunny Side Up, one of my favorite parts of the entire show, apart from sitting next to this gorgeous lady. Yes, girl.
Love being with you, T.
All right, so have you ever had a special occasion and wondered what it would be like to have your favorite singer celebrate with you? Well, if you're in that seat right now, stay in faith. It can happen. One couple was recently surprised at the altar by Grammy Award-winning singer and famous wedding crasher Ed Sheeran, who surprised and serenaded them before they said, "I do." You don't believe me? Here's the proof.
As you continue to walk down the